Perfections. Hey guys, we are live. It's Ted Bogert with The TED Show on The TED Show. Super excited to have Kendra Davies back on our Talk It Out series.
Hi.
Hey Kendra, what's happening?
Hello, everybody.
So we're going to talk about, and she's obviously with Stellar Life Coaching. And I have the little, if I didn't put it down there, I will. I meant to, stellarlifecoaching.com. But we are talking today about perfectionism, being present over being perfect. I love this topic because I think I'm perfect in every single way.
Of course you are, honey. Little Mary Poppins.
Thank you. I'm Mary Poppins. Of course, that's exactly right. But I do think people get caught up in it. I think people, it impacts their personal life, their professional life, spiritual life, everything. I mean, I've had people say I have to say the perfect prayer to, I mean, there's just so many things that people really get caught up in it. And I think it's part of our society right now. I mean, people are really hard on themselves. They're also reading all these books. So I've got to read all these books. Got to get 20 books in while COVID, like there's just so much of it. It's running rampant. But you came up with the title. You came up with the subject, which you always do. So thank you. So tell us a little bit about why, and then let's dive in.
So I wanted to talk about perfectionism and being present over perfect because, we talked about regret and we talked about grief before. And we were talking about like that, the way we protect ourselves. And I think perfectionism is one of the most common ways that we protect ourselves, right? We either go like the far left, like I'm garbage and I'm nothing, or we make that far right. Like when it comes to protections, we tend to go one of these two ways. And I think the far right way is going to be perfectionism. And I've traveled down both of these paths, and in my experience, nobody is immune from perfectionism. When it comes to failing, our society and in our world, we are taught to learn a skill so good that people will pay you for it. Yeah, that's the goal.
That's true.
and so we tend to aim for perfection in such ways. And I think with social media being what it is right now, we get to curate our experiences to the point where people will look at you and think that you're perfect. You have the perfect life and your children are fucking angels and your house is always clean. Your house
because that's what you put out there. That's what you put out there.
We're curating our experiences. Exactly. And I think that perfectionism, the only reason people believe it is because they believe that perfect is possible. So when they see it, they say, oh, look, she's perfect. What am I doing? Right. And what is that saying? Comparison is the thief of joy. Right. But comparison and perfectionism, they go together, because the only way I know that I'm not perfect is if I'm comparing my imperfections to you. So they go together.
Why are we so caught up in that? Why is it? Because do you think social media has made it worse?
Yeah.
I would say 100%. So too. I feel like whenever I do a presentation and we do it on social media, I have to remind people, and there are so many people that have an aha moment, that social media basically on a whole isn't always real. I know it's hard to believe, but people put stuff out and we're taught to do the selfie that's perfect, to put the perfect quote, to do the perfect graphics. And so you present this out there, and then immediately what do? If you're not that person, you feel like crap. You feel like I'm not perfect, so therefore I'm not good, I'm not worthy. And so it feeds into that whole worthiness thing, I think.
Correct. And I think that you're touching on the second half of perfection, which is believing that what you do is who you are. So if I have the perfect house and if I raise perfect children, then I am obviously good, right? Because I am what I do, not who I actually am. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, and again, in our Western world, this is what we do, right? We are taught that we are what we produce. Yes. And that is how we generate value and meaning. And I think that a lot of the work that I do with folks is learning to actually assess what our values are, so we can have an appropriate measuring stick for what is good and what is not good, right?
So how do we
And
do that though? I want to ask you because I feel like, and you're getting some love. Louis, you're correct. The stuff on Facebook is not real. I know he was being a smart ass. Hey, Nick, thank you. I feel like people do though. They buy into the not reality
Mhm.
of perfectionism, and they focus on that over being present. And what I mean by that, and we can talk more about it, is that they focus on just looking good, but the rest of their life is falling apart in shambles. But as long as
Mhm.
it looks good,
Yeah.
they could have the worst marriage, the worst relationship with their parents, their kids, their job. But if it looks good for everybody else, that actually feeds people. And I'm amazed at that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, I mean, you and I, we are cut from the same cloth, but I tend to have far more compassion.
You're kinder.
And just a smidge less judgy, right? Like we're all perfectionists
Do
in
I
our own
sound
right.
judgy? I don't possibly sound judgy.
What? So, but I feel like at the end of the day, we all have some version of this. And, even for me, shocker, I have, I have, I have a bit of this perfectionism, right? And I used to joke about being a recovering perfectionist, but I feel like perfectionism is a lot like alcoholism. Like if you have it, you always have it. You
You
know what I
always
mean? Like
do.
this is a permanent, lifelong illness that I have. But it's recognizing that as we start to move the outside pieces, that doesn't change the inside stuff. That's why we
Right.
say it's present over perfect. Am I present in my body? Am I present in my values? Am I present? Am I mindful of my thoughts? Am I mindful of my fears? Am I mindful of what I'm afraid people are going to think of me? You said something that I think was really important. And I always say in my past, I've always wanted to look smart instead of be smart, right?
Right.
So I learned how to read and memorize things really, really fast, but I have no long-term retention, right? So like I could read a book on being present over perfect the night before the show, remember it, bang the show out, and then I forget everything tomorrow because I'm not learning to actually learn. I'm learning to make myself look smart.
Well, that's
Does that
how
make
we're
sense?
taught that though, Kendra. We're taught that from an
That's what
early
school is.
age.
Yeah.
Yes. Learn
Yeah.
the material to pass the exam and then move on.
Exactly.
There's no emphasis on long-term retention or how it impacts your life
Correct.
or what you're supposed to do with. I agree.
Correct. And so people will come to me and be like, well, I don't know why I'm not making money. I've got this, 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 and this. I've got the house and I got the car and I got the kids and I got the blah, 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 blah. But I'm still not happy. And like
Right.
what it always comes down to is this misalignment of our values, this separateness, this step outside of what we actually believe is good and true about ourselves.
Correct.
And then we just make our fucking house there. And then all of a sudden we wake up and we're 40, 50, 60 years old and we're saying, how did I get here? Like,
Right.
is this really my life? Like, why am I not happy? I have the house, I have the money, I have the things. Why am I not happy? And well,
I see
my
people,
darling,
it's people, again, it goes back to the comparison thing you talked about earlier. People aren't happy unless they have what they think everybody else expects them to have, or that they see on social media or even in their own neighborhoods. Like I live in a crazy neighborhood where every house is different. I used to live in a cookie cutter neighborhood. I've done both. And I have to say the cookie cutter neighborhoods are actually a little bit easier because there's some cool continuity there. When you get into a neighborhood where you have to kind of go along with whatever your own individuality is, you're looking around and going, wait, does my neighbor have a rose bush? Well, shoot, I can't have a rose bush. Wait, if it's red, I need to have red, or maybe I should have red and yellow. You're constantly comparing yourself, and then you're making yourself miserable, and like you said, not staying true to what your values and what your standards are.
Yeah. And I think it's normal to temp check. You know what I mean? I think it's normal to stop and like look around and be like, like if you and I were sitting face to face and you heard and we hear a loud boom, I'm going to look at you and be like, is this a threat? Are we running?
Exactly.
Or are we okay? Is that thunder? Right. Like I'm going to temp check. And I think that temp checking is normal. There's a level of comparison. It's not even comparison. It's discernment, right? Like Do I like this color? I don't fucking know. Let me look at George's house. Like,
Exactly,
that makes sense.
because we're so afraid to have our own opinion that it might not be the perfect opinion, that we don't have our own opinions anymore.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I cannot argue with that. But I also think that when we're talking about opinions, we're still not talking about what I'm talking about.
Correct.
I'm talking about, am I aligned with who I actually am? And I've never met a single client who didn't actually know who they were. They come in, they say, I don't know. But when we peel back those layers, they do know. It's just that they don't believe that they can do the thing that needs to be done to feel like they are being themselves.
Correct.
They're afraid to leave that job. They're afraid to leave their partners. They're afraid that people are going to think they're a bad mom if they take them out of that Montessori school. You know, like they're afraid. And that to me, that fear and self-interest keep us locked into perfectionism.
Yeah, I feel like, I'm sorry, you froze a little bit. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I feel like the part that we haven't really delved into is the present part. So how do we manage to be present instead of focusing on being perfect?
Yeah. I feel like this is, I mean, one, I don't think it's an easy answer, and I think it's different for everybody, but I do believe that I could probably boil it down to being within your values. You know, I'm a recovering drug addict, alcoholic, like you name it. It's my drug of choice. That's how I get down. So when I think back to some of the worst things that I've ever done, there was always a moment when I knew it wasn't the right thing to do.
Right.
Like, there is a moment, and I have that same moment when I decide if I'm going to clock in or not. I decide if I'm going to lie about that. I decide if I'm going to respond to that text right now, or if I'm just going to accidentally forget about it. Right. Like we have this feeling, this knowing within us, and it does not shut up. You can ignore it all you want, but it doesn't shut up. And I feel like when we talk about being present, what I hear, how I interpret that for myself is, how do I get as close to that knowing as possible, to where I can hear it, to where I can trust myself, and when I trust myself, I'm going to make different decisions. I'm going to make better decisions. I'm going to choose better partners. I'm going to choose friendships that are actually going to allow me to thrive and flourish, right? When I am present and with that knowing, those values, those beliefs that I believe are good and true about myself.
I think people get caught up in defining themselves. They know what the values are. You're right. Like, I think everybody has that moment when you make a choice to do something that's against those values, you know it. I mean, unless you're diagnosable, and that's for a whole nother show. But you know you're making that choice, like you said. And I think that there's this driving factor for people. Well, if I don't do it, I'm not going to be liked. I'm not going to be accepted. I'm not going to be good enough. I'm not going to be worthy. And I think people get so driven. I've had people tell me, you can look at the pictures on social media, for example, and it looks like they have the most amazing house. Even their dogs and their fish are perfect. And yet I know that one of them's having an affair. One kid is in trouble. If financially they're struggling. And I don't look, I want to put it out there because I'm a big believer in law of attraction, that there are good things, but I also think people get caught up in that too. So how do we differentiate? How do we remove ourselves and go, you know what? I'm not going to compare myself to Kendra today. I'm going to take a look deep and do what I know I need to do.
I mean, that's literally, you just described the how. That's right. It. You've got it all sorted. Show over. I think another helpful thing to remember is that if you think of any story that's ever moved you, it was never from somebody getting it perfect and getting it right, start to finish.
True.
Like, every person who's ever moved me or inspired me came from fucking fire and shitstorms. Like, it was never just, I woke up and it was just perfect.
Oh, the light shining. Yeah, I know.
It was like they got destroyed. Life happened and they failed and they messed up and they made mistakes and they were extraordinarily human. And those are the stories that I'm drawn to. I think that those are the teachers that we're drawn to, right? Is that
Yes.
we're drawn to people who have lived experience, who are real. And when we talk about authenticity, yeah, authenticity cannot happen in isolation. I cannot walk around and be like, I'm authentic. You know what I mean? Authenticity
Correct.
is when I show up in the world and I am exactly as I actually am.
Right.
My words, my behaviors, and my values are aligned. Yeah.
And so you do that.
Authenticity.
So tell me, you do that, and then you're not accepted by certain people in your group. So
Sure.
let's give them some tools, maybe, because that's the hardest part, right? I think everybody wants that love and acceptance. There's
Sure.
acceptance everywhere. And so if we're not accepted by the group because we are adhering to our values and standards, how can somebody stand up? What are some things that they could do? Meditation, evaluation, come to Stellar Life Coaching. I'm always going to get the plug in. What can people
and
do?
I love that about you. I feel like I always go back whenever it comes down to like perfectionism. I think of like the 5 things, the 5 regrets of the dying.
Yes.
Are you familiar with this?
Yes.
So
I don't know what they are, but I know.
I know, and I can't list them right now on the show. So I hate it when I do shit like that, when I bring things up that I can't actually recall with any certainty.
I think work too much was one of them.
Right. But none of them were like, I regret not being perfect.
Right.
What they are is regrets for trying to do shit that made them look perfect. Not regret that they were not perfect. They regretted not loving more, not expressing themselves more. The regrets come when we are not in alignment and we behave outside of that, right?
Yes.
Like that is it. So I think that, if you want the how-to, I think working with a coach, working with a therapist, I think is really helpful. I think paying attention, whenever I do this in workshops, I always use the example of honesty, because this is a quality that most people like to believe that they have about themselves. But then when I ask the group, raise your hand if you've said yes to something you wanted to say no to. Right? Raise your hand if, you lied about when you saw that text message. Right? So when we recognize that we're always choosing our values and we have a false system in our head that says, I'm an honest person, but that's only because I don't qualify these particular lies as bad. Right?
Right.
Like we have to learn to define the values for ourselves, because to me, I don't think those little white lies make you dishonest. I don't. In fact,
I agree.
Which is convenient, I know. But when we actually challenge ourselves, when we say, like, to be honest to me is to be able, I can say anything with love and compassion. Absolutely anything in any circumstance, I can say it with love and compassion. If I find that I am unable to say something with compassion, I am in fact being dishonest.
Yes.
That is my measure of honesty. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's hard though, because your feelings and how you're feeling don't necessarily equate to how the person who's going to receive the message.
Yeah, that's not my problem. How you receive it is on you, boo. I didn't have your daddy. I didn't have your mama.
My favorite thing is when
my daddy.
My favorite thing is when I'm honest with people, and it is a struggle. I mean, you're honest. You want to express how you're feeling. I do always try to give thought to how it's going to be perceived, which is why, like you, I do everything in my power to be kind in when I'm having these kinds of conversations. But there are people who are like, I don't want to hear that. I've ruined relationships over the smallest things. But what I realized is that those were never really relationships.
Correct.
There was whatever that fake word is for relationships. But I think it's important that you stick to it, because once you realize the power of sticking to your values and your standards and what you believe and what your basic humanness is, and you just go forth with that every single time, perfectionism's going to go away a little bit, and you're going to be more present and more honest in your life. So I agree 100% with you.
Yeah. And also, like, the things that fall away were never meant for you. You know, perfectionism is this MacGyver maneuver to try to keep everything in a specific place. And when you let go of that, naturally things are going to fall apart. There's going to be people that you really thought at one point their opinions of you mattered, and then they're just not going to fucking matter anymore.
They don't matter, right?
And I find that if in fact you are being kind and compassionate, yeah, and this person like does not or cannot hear what you're having to say, then at the end of the day, that may not be the right relationship, right? Like there's plenty of people who, and again, when we're talking about perfectionism, I think that we do this thing to other people, the same thing we do to ourselves, right? So I expect that you're just supposed to love everything that I have to say, and that you're supposed to respond with love and kindness to everything that I have to say. Well, that's not true.
No.
Because if I get to be honest and authentic and align myself, my words, my behaviors with my values, what is also true?
Right. You do too.
It's also true for you.
That's correct.
And guess what? If I get to choose what my definition of honesty is, and you get to choose what your definition of honesty is, you might say, Kendra, telling me you want to come to my party when you don't is hurtful.
Right. And you just don't know. And that's why the engagement, the conversation, the open dialogue is so critical. That's why the more that you stick to your values, the easier it becomes overall to continue to plow through some of these relationships and conversations. Because
if you're not looking to be, sorry.
No, go ahead.
If you're not looking to be perfect, if somebody comes to you and says that something that you did like hurt their feelings, then I would imagine if you're not trying to be perfect and you are aligned with your values, hurting other people probably doesn't fall in line with that. So you might pause. You might have that initial defensiveness, right? Because that's what happens because we're human.
Yep.
And then you might think, wow, I care about this person. Right. I didn't want to go to that party and I did lie. And that hurt their feelings. I can understand how that would be hurtful. I can apologize for lying. And then I, within my own values, can decide that moving forward, I won't lie. I'll tell them the whole truth.
I just did this and I'm going to share it. And then any of my friends who are watching who know me will know this. And I love you. I'm just going to say that right up front to those friends. But I'm a big believer, talking about lying, the little lies, of if we're getting in a group, we're going together. Let's say, Kendra, I say, let's go out. And then I invite 25 other people. I feel like I want the boundaries set. So I have been lying to certain people about how I'm comfortable with them bringing a whole bunch of other people to things that I really don't want them to. So I recently decided not to do that. I have to say, so far so good, but I haven't hit the core of the group of people who love to bring others in. And normally I love human beings, but when I set up the parameters and I have an expectation, I can choose at that point whether I'm going to allow it or I'm going to get upset about it or what I'm going to do. And I have chosen future now to not continue that, because the last time I did, it was a very uncomfortable situation and I wanted to kick myself the whole way out. Why didn't I say no?
Yeah.
Why did I lie to them and tell them it's okay, bring whomever you want?
No, everything's fine. Everything's fine.
I'm golden. I'm in the corner doing shots with somebody I don't know, but
punching myself in the face. Yeah. And that's the price we pay when we're trying to people please and be perfect and hold this facade, is that we ultimately think, oh, well, it's less effort. It's going to hurt less. It's way less uncomfortable. And I think to myself, that can't be. Because I think about you that night as a social person who actually enjoys people. Like, you are a community dude. You bring folks together. For you to tell me that in that situation, you're in the corner drinking, throwing it back just to numb out from the experience, what that tells me is that it actually might have been less uncomfortable to just say to that person, I'm thinking a solid 5. You know what I'm
I
saying? Like 5
agree.
folks. That's it.
Why wouldn't I have? Why didn't I? And why am I allowing that if I am close to these people? Why would I not say just that thing? Because in looking back, if I said it and they got mad, I'm pretty sure we would have gotten over it. But if they got so mad that we didn't go out again, then it wasn't the relationship that I thought it was. And then we're going back to really establishing where your toxicity is. And that's a whole nother topic, and where you're allowing things to happen that aren't in agreement with the values that you talk about.
Yeah. And if you communicate your boundaries, then it's your job to hold the boundaries, right? Like, boundaries aren't to control other people. They're to limit your behavior, not theirs.
Correct.
So if it's your boundary, then it's your job to communicate it effectively ahead of time, right? Like, ahead of time.
Agreed.
And then when somebody crosses that boundary, it's your job to hold that boundary.
So I'm going to put it out there that the next time, I love all of you who are watching that know about this. The next time a group text comes out and we say we'd like to get together, I'm going to be the very first one that says, who else is coming? Because it's very important to me, because I have limited time. And so when I dedicate time and I devote time and I want to spend time with a certain person, I don't want all the periphery around. If I wanted it, trust me, I could invite the world and they'd all be there. So I am going to put it out there every single time, because that is what is true to what I'm feeling. Is it great? And do I feel weird saying it? I do. I'm not going to lie. It's a strange thing to go, well, don't bring those people, because I thought it was just us.
Yeah, but I also think that if I peel back those layers, Ted, and I know we've only got a few minutes, but like, if I was to peel back those layers, like, I believe that there's a younger version of Ted who was like, man, I really want to connect with this one. What do I have to do? And we learn how to mix and mingle, and we learn the power of groups. So at one point in time, this tactic might have been useful and awesome, and maybe even help build you to where you are today, right?
Right.
But now, and this is what happens with life. This is like, perfectionism worked for me. Like, it didn't suck forever. It was awesome for a little bit. You know what I mean?
So true. Yeah, I do.
But then it just gets to like this level that is suffocating. And then you wake up and you don't recognize your life, and you don't know who you actually are anymore, because everything is filtered through that lens. So I think for your story and for your example, I think it's beautiful, because it says, I'm not going to people please. I'm allowed to decide what I want to spend my time with. I'm allowed. I'm allowed to set that boundary.
But I was willing to give that up to not hurt someone's feelings or cause grief. But remember, that's also on me, because I haven't tested it yet. So it could be totally made up in my brain that it's going to cause grief. I don't know. But I do know that I'm getting more and more toward getting rid of those little teeny things lies that I should not be telling, and being, true to myself. All right. So that was amazing. Got lots of love up and down here. We love you guys. How can people reach out to you and get to know Kendra better, or maybe become one of your clients?
So you can reach me at stellarlifecoaching.com. My phone number is on there. You can text that phone number. You can also email me directly from the website, stellarlifecoaching.com.
All right. You were amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, darling.
Stuff every time. You're amazing. All right. Thank you. Mwah. Thank you,
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
All the love. Go hit it. Thank you so much, Kendra. Love you. Appreciate you.
Love you too.
Bye, honey. Talk to you later. Bye, guys.